Typically, when you stop someone, at least my understanding of policing, there's a suspicion of a crime or an actual crime that's been committed in the vicinity, in the area, someone, or there's some reason, as you mentioned before, that word, Cheryl, 2 words, probable cause. I mean, that's a cherished principle in policing and also constitutional rights. In the absence of that, when I hear investigative stop...
During that investigative stop, a struggle ensued between the officers and the suspect, and an officer-involved shooting occurred.
I got to tell you, a bell and a whistle goes up. What is an investigative stop?
That's the code talk that LAPD is so good at using, because an investigative stop could really mean anything, or it could mean nothing. And so I believe that in this instance, and I've seen it personally, where officers will create that probable cause that doesn't exist after the fact, because now they've got to explain that force that they just used to legitimize something that should have never occurred. And so to say whether it's an investigative stop or to say that Ezell did something suspicious, what does that mean?
But you also have to realize that from the officer standpoint, they're getting a lot of pressure because the chiefs, the last 2 chiefs, have made a commitment to reduce crime. So police officers are going to go out thinking without proper direction that they're supposed to be aggressive in neighborhoods where crime rates are usually pretty high. And they're not getting the kind of direction that they need to understand their natural instincts to be aggressive, to move forward. And that's why they're selected for those units, is because they are aggressive and they're going to go making those stops. But they have to be pulled back, and this is where it comes into the command staff's responsibility to make sure that their officers understand what their true purpose is in those neighborhoods, and it's to help those communities and not to put them under siege.
What's the fine line that you cross over in terms of legitimate use of excessive force, which may or may not have happened? We don't have all the information on Ezell Ford. Certainly, I think with Michael Brown, you know, I'm going to go there with that one. That was clearly, clearly excessive force, beyond a doubt. But Ezell Ford, I'll leave that dangling for the moment. What's the fine line that's crossed, Cheryl and Scott, in terms of an officer's need to use force versus the overuse of deadly force?
Level of force, if you had somebody that was just pulling away and you use your baton or your firearm, that would be excessive force. So the amount of force the officer uses has to be consistent with the amount of resistance on the part of the suspect.
Police officers are taught to escalate and de-escalate. And so that's where, if you have someone who's resisting, you use that force necessary to overcome that resistance, and then you de-escalate. You bring it down a notch. And once that person is in control or in custody, handcuffed, whatever that thing is, if they're walking away and you grab them, they stop, well, you de-escalate. If there's an altercation, if there's blows that are thrown, once that person is in custody, then you de-escalate. And I think the problem occurs is when, and you know, we're all human, and so when the adrenaline is pumping and you get amped up, it's the same thing you see at the end of a vehicle pursuit. Officers get out of the car, I've been chasing you for the last 20 minutes at 60, 70, 80 miles an hour. When I get out of the car, you're going to pay. And so the same thing happens on foot. If I have to fight you, if I've got to run and chase you, if I've got to jump over a fence, when I get you, if I don't use common sense and if I don't take a breath, you're going to pay.